So KOTOR is continuing, having a good old time with that. Boy, was I happy with the uh, with the planet that we landed on and the events that occurred in there. Super duper good. And with that, I've been a little bit curious about, you know, some of the ins and outs of the Star Wars because there's some new stuff
Oh
going on.
God.
So I've been, you know,
Oh God.
I've been delving a little bit. I'm still kind of going through Clone Wars, and it's up and down in the first season. It's a bit hard to get through some of the rough ones, but I know it gets a lot better later on. You just have to kind of either A, like grin and bear it, or B, skip to it, or whatever the case is. But we'll see where that is. But that's not what I want to talk about right now. Although it did come to my attention, something I realized, that a big part of a lot of the like holy shit fuck yeah Clone Wars stuff, in addition to the fact that it got a lot better later on, was that there's a generation of people that grew up with that as their primary Star Wars experience when they were kids, and it didn't quite land with me that like the timing was such that this was what people were like primarily focusing on as their Star Wars experience. A group of kids in their like early 20s right now, for example, and that explains why such strong feelings were being sent our way about it. Because I remember, like I said, at the time, my experience, not to go over it for the millionth time, but saw Gendy Wars, loved it, then saw the trailer for the movie, thought that sucks because I wanted more Gendy, went to see the movie anyway, was horribly disappointed, and went, this sucks. But if you were growing up at that time, you managed to ride that wave out until it got good, and so you have really fond memories of the best parts of that, but you're possibly forgetting about some of the really slow beginnings that it takes a while to get through, and some of the fillers that are really not great. But that's not what I wanted to talk about.
I mean, I've said this over and over as an example, and I brought up I'm going to be on Coffee with Clemps this week. I brought it up there, but like there are like 15-year-olds for which like only Final Fantasies like 12 onwards came out in their lifetimes. Like the context of what brand is to people of different ages is fucking wild.
Yeah, I think the recommends basically are more accurately Clone Wars is really good, asterisk, and then like a list of the good ones. But that's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is the Darth Vader comics that came out in 2018. We got this run of Darth Vader stuff that is basically it's known as, to put it accurately, because there's a couple of different Vader comics out there. These are specifically the Star Wars, Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith comics. That's what they're called. And 4 graphic novels here. Reading through. I'm on the 3rd one, and guess what? They're good. So far, I've read the first 2, and they're pretty fucking all right, man. In particular,
so I feel like I have a built it, because I've seen parts of these comics and they are good. People put like certain pages up on the
pages that get posted are usually
are
from this a lot of the time.
Yeah, they're really good. I have a real problem with it, and it might be because I'm not a comic book fan, right? And it's not even specific to comic books.
Is it that?
But no amount of cool ass Darth Vader moments in a comic book are going to fucking erase I hate sand.
Yeah. That's what I thought.
It's coarse and rough and it gets everywhere.
That's what I thought. Yeah. So basically, it is that the movies themselves will forever be what they are, no matter what the supplementary material is. Correct?
Yeah,
I agree.
And like the fucking, like, I don't want to get all into canon argument, but like you can't like remove like the films are like the definitive source material.
Mm-hmm.
So you can never be like, oh, the comics says, oh, that was actually not really as lame as it was. It's like, no, it was totally as lame as it was. Anakin Skywalker sucks and is fucking lame.
So here's what's up, right? To go back to Clone Wars for a second, part of what Clone Wars does is attempt to make his character make more sense in between those
but it's
movies.
Also supplementary material compared to the movie.
It is certainly not the primary like point on the timeline. The movies are the big ones, totally, and you cannot get away from that, right? I think if you go into some of this stuff hoping to make the existing bad stuff better, that's the wrong energy to have. I just picked this up and started reading it because I want to read a cool Darth Vader comic. That's
like it hits my brain, and I'm glad we all have context for this now. If you listen to last week's podcast, but it hits my brain where you open up page 1 of this really good Darth Vader comic, and the first page is like, hey, do you guys remember Darth Vader? He was the coolest guy. He was the coolest guy. And you're like, wait, wasn't he fucking lame and pathetic? He was the coolest guy.
They don't
look at that.
Hey,
don't look at that over there.
They don't obito him. They don't obito him. To put it another way,
and I can never see Darth Vader as anyone other than like a pathetic 17-year-old guy like crying while begging his older girlfriend for sex. Like, that's Darth Vader. Darth Vader is simp supreme, and he's the worst.
Lame Hayden Christensen being pretty bad. Yeah, that doesn't go away. That doesn't go away. But if there's a cool story here and it's a good comic, I want to read it. I'd like to find out about the good thing. I want to know what's good. I want to know what's happening. I want to know why people like it here. So I think, because I have no disagreement with what you're saying, that I can, but I'm accepting that, and I'm still going to sit down and open up the book and turn the pages because I want to know what happened. And I did, and then I've read through the two of them.
This is where I become like a real asshole, and I go, but it didn't happen because it's EU, and EU doesn't count ever.
And I know that this conversation goes nowhere because I know that the end result is going to be, but if you cannot replace what the movie's done, then why even bother? And then the answer is just because the thing in front of me has good stuff in it that I want to know about. I don't care about that part. I'm not trying to replace the bad. It's because it's still fucking bad.
It's not even about replacement. I have trouble getting into a story when I have to put like my cap on that says this story probably doesn't count and didn't happen. So a really good example is the EU, like the old Star Wars EU. The fact that everybody just snapped their fingers and, oh yeah, none of that shit happened. It's like, it's fan fiction. It doesn't count. It never counted.
Right, but all of this stuff, this is the basis of this is underneath is that it's almost, the basis of this viewpoint is kind of like there's a hierarchy and the movies are this foundation of that is kind of like sacred. But to me, when these ones were so bad to begin with, I don't really care. I'm just reading this to see what's in it and to see what's good about it and see what I like about it, in the same way that I can play KOTOR and like what's happening in KOTOR, still knowing how bad the other things in Star Wars are, and be like, oh, I like this part. This stuff was good. and it's
See,
not
the
real.
smart thing they did in KOTOR
And I know that
was they got KOTOR as far away from that shit as possible.
But I know that there's a lot of people that are like, as a result, looking for Revan to be as relevant in the canon as possible. And I know that that doesn't lead to anywhere pleasant. So I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm playing a game that doesn't matter, that doesn't exist, but there's still such good shit in it that it's worth playing. So it would be silly to say, don't play KOTOR, none of it matters, when so much good shit is in KOTOR.
No, see, here's the thing. There's nothing in KOTOR that is contradicted by anything in anything. And KOTOR is in its nice little safe bubble where it can live forever and has no problem. But when you start talking about how Admiral Thrawn was a clone and all this shit of the fall of the Empire Remnant, and that just gets hand-waved away.
Pat, I'm sure there's tons of things in the KOTOR games that go against the other things that existed in different Star Wars lores. Like, there's so much going on in Star Wars that there must be tons of things that overlap that are different about that. There has to be. There's no question. The point is,
everyone's saying wrong, but I played through both KOTORs. I don't remember anything in the original 3 or even 6 films that argues with KOTOR at all.
The point ultimately is just there's some things I hear about in Star Wars from time to time that I go, I want to know more about this because that sounds pretty cool. And the most I can do is just check it out on its own and pretty much almost preemptively agree that whatever I'm reading is its own thing. If it connects to other things, then I guess it could, but I'm not going to sweat it too much because there's so much disjointed bad and good in Star Wars that there's no point even trying to piece that all together. The Mandalorian was a show that I enjoyed watching. I'm glad I watched it. It fits into this place. It kind of has this content. It does a bit of that, but you can't erase the mistakes of the shit movies. You can't. Those are always going to be there.
You know what?
But it's not going to make me stop
stronger
from checking out this stuff. That seems pretty cool.
I think it's a lot stronger for me when it's specific people, like characters. Like, when it's general setting things, it doesn't bother me as much. Mm-hmm. But when you go, this character who is like this actually wasn't like this, mm-hmm. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Like, it feels like... So it feels like trying to build a house on a bad foundation.
Well, I'm like talking about these comics, right? For example, like they're cool, they're good, they're well done. I enjoyed the first 2 of the 4 that I have here, and you know, in the end, I'm probably gonna just look at it and say like, wow, that was really well done. It's a shame they didn't do that in the movies. It's a shame that the people that wrote these did something better with Vader in his immediate first years than what George did. You know, it sucks that that's what happened. This is a better take on the character, and I can.
Well, what George and Abrams and Johnson and a lot of people did.
Anakin. I'm talking about Anakin.
Rogue One has this problem as well.
Well, I'm talking about Anakin. I'm talking about.
Anakin's in Rogue One.
Yes, but specifically the derpiness that comes from Hayden Christensen, Anakin hanging out in those movies in 2 and 3, and then like how that.
Let me see if I can put a point on my confusion, and maybe you can explain it to me. Which is, I read a comic about, or half of one anyway, about an Imperial soldier who tried to become Darth Vader's friend.
Yeah, that was the one of the clones. Yeah, that was a cool one.
And Darth Vader ends up just being like a fucking asshole, mm-hmm. and it was a horrible mistake. Mm-hmm. And there's some cool stuff that happens in that, and Vader's cool, and there's interesting stuff happening. How are you able to separate the fact that like Darth Vader, oh my god, he's so cool and evil, and he's such a monster, from him like bawling his eyes out and begging for sex and crying about his mom after he killed a bunch of babies?
I'm not trying to fold them into the same folder. I'm not trying to create.
But they are.
I don't.
But it's literally the same character.
I'm reading a story that this writer wrote about Darth Vader, and I'm seeing how they handle this the character. I know that in the hands of Lucas, it's this. I know what it is already. I don't like it. I think it's very poor. And when I see what's being done here, I'm like, oh, that's a cool take on it, and I'm able to walk away with that. I'm definitely not going to sit there and argue. I think here's what I think. Right, I think the way your point works and the stance that I agree with is when somebody were to try to argue that no, he's not that guy you saw in the movies. He's really this cool guy from the comic, and this is what matters, and you didn't see the cool stuff because it all happened here, right? If someone were to have that point of view and try to push that as like, you need to go read all the other cool stuff that happened outside of these movies, that would be silly. That would be super dumb.
I am seeing
they'd have no
what might be the most baffling response, which is those aren't the same character. They're different people. That like I'm not personalities change, and I'm like then people talk about that's Superman
not what I'm saying.
Is always portrayed differently, and Spider-Man changes constantly.
No, that's definitely not what I'm saying.
And those things are terrible.
I'm definitely that's not I'm not saying they're different people. I'm not saying that at all. I don't agree with that. What I am saying,
has everyone lost their mind? Like,
no, it's just there's a final step in which you're trying to fold this in and go, well, this is Darth Vader, I guess, and it's hitting the incompatibility of Hayden Christensen, and then you're going, so thus the whole effort is for naught, so don't bother. And I don't need to do that step. I can just read this thing, go, oh, that was a good story about Darth Vader, and not care about whether or not it changes the perspective of him or doesn't, because I'm taking this as a story that was written here by someone else and someone that was more competent. And again, what am I at the end? I go, well, that is another author's take on it. I sure wish it was as good when the originals were around, but it isn't, But I don't really. And again, I'm sure that I'm also poorly arguing my point here. I'm sure someone smarter could do a better job explaining why it's not stupid to just pick up a story and want to read it and enjoy the story. Like, I feel like I have to break this down to such a ridiculous step to get through, because, the pat breakdown of these topics. But at the end of the day, I guess
it always breaks down to, I don't get fan fiction.
I guess. And to me, I'm like, this,
if it doesn't
if
count,
I flip through this
matter?
And if there's things I enjoy inside of this book, I'd like to see those things. This is the beginning of the feeling. This is enough for me to want to pick the book up and start opening it. What else happens is not as important as the step, which is, I think there might be I heard some cool things in this. I want to see them, right? I don't need to go through a step afterwards necessarily.
I don't know. The Darth Vader stuff in particular is extra complicated because, I distinctly remember watching the writer of one of these comics get into arguments over whether or not, Palpatine is Vader's dad after he wrote a comic that says Palpatine is Vader's dad, and then Disney told him that he couldn't do that, and so he goes on Twitter to argue. People's like, listen, I'm the writer. That's not what I wrote. And everyone's like, it's literally what you just wrote. Why are you...
I mean, some folks will argue because that this book is canon because it's printed under the new Disney thing and it is considered official. So they do say that whatever happens in these books is supposed to be part of the Vader thing or whatever. But I'm not even gonna
Dude, the movies aren't even canon at this fucking
But I'm
point
not even gonna
cases.
I'm not gonna go as far as to even make that my main point, if anything. Right? I don't care personally how you choose to look at the book and whether or not it folds in or explains the character in any way. I just look at it as, I want to read the story about Darth Vader. I hear it's pretty cool. And then I read it.
But Darth Vader sucks now, dude.
Well,
Darth Vader has sucked since the aughts.
The comic had some pretty cool stuff that I liked in it. And I thought I would talk about it because I read through 2 comics this week that I thought were good. I was going to talk about some stuff that I think was pretty awesome that they did, and then I was gonna probably go, here's an example of how you can use this character to better build off of what the original trilogy started, as opposed to what we got in 2 and 3, and just kind of go like, man, this writer did some good stuff that George wasn't able to do. And then I was probably going to talk about the introduction of, like, you got to have a new canon. You got to have some other people swinging lightsabers around because, even though you only have 2 Sith, they introduced the idea of these Inquisitors, and that works its way into the new game, of course. So, like, now we get to kind of have, like, all right, and then also the final season of Clone Wars. So now you have, like, a way where there's, like, lightsaber fights, but you don't have to create more Sith necessarily, because otherwise you're like, where were all these people in the last movie? So they found their way around that.
I would like to handle one last thing before we go forward, because I feel like it's the perfect encapsulation of this argument. There's a guy spamming chat like an asshole asking, well, Pat, does everything cool that Boba Fett ever did get erased because he fell into that Sarlacc pit and that was lame? And the answer is, what cool shit? None of that shit ever happened, ever, because it was all EU shit that got erased. He's literally never done anything other than fall into a pit. So yeah, I guess it totally does erase. Like, the coolest thing he did ever in his life was be Jango Fett's lame clone baby, and then figure out how to follow Han Solo one time in Empire.
Until Mandalorian.
And then he fell into a pit and died back in, like, 79.
Until Mandalorian season 2.
Okay.
Which we'll find out.
But he hasn't done anything yet.
Yeah, we'll find out soon.
Like, he's got a cool design, but that's it.
We will find out
soon.
The
question is, well, what about all that cool shit he did? You mean, like, nothing?
Yeah.
You mean, like, literally nothing ever?
Right. So
until later this year?
So that's not the stance I would ever take. I think that's because I'm like, you're arguing, like, stuff that happened in supplemental material. It's still canon, but, like, I don't like, there's an argument here where, again, I think that person's stance and, like, where you are is based on this idea of, like, and thus in conclusion, Darth Vader is cool. And it's like, no, I don't see things that way, right? Because I know, and I guess this is just coming off of knowing how comic books are written, where it's like, man, this version of Captain America is way different from that version of Captain America, and, like, what's up with that? It's like, oh, who wrote that? Oh, that was this? Okay, yeah.
Oh, wow, cool. This leads to the argument I always had, which is the good run of this, which is the real one. And you went, I don't understand. And I went, comics suck.
Yeah.
And then you would tell me to read All-Star Superman,
right,
basically.
So here we are in the, which is an example. It's just like, there's good and there's bad, and these characters are large IPs that different people grab and tell stories with. And
that's terrible.
Yeah,
stop that.
It's definitely not as great as a singular.
All of those people should make their own characters.
I prefer a singular good story. I prefer the way a manga handles it in most cases. We've definitely had this discussion before. It is nice when you can just get a consistent part to part, like you get your Berserk or your JoJo or your everything that just travels and goes down the line. Fucking Captain Tsubasa has been running forever. But outside of that, what we have here is a collection of stories because of the way for whatever reason the industry is the way it is. We have a collection of stories. Some are good, some are bad. I enjoy reading the good ones because if they're well told, then I can have fun with those. And I don't need much more than that. Just enjoying something that's well done is good enough of a reward for me to decide to peruse it. Does that part make any sense? Like, you know what I mean?
No.
Okay. I don't know where to go then, because
it can't be good because it features a character that's been ruined. You can't unruin characters. Once they're ruined, they're ruined. Like, I'm not watching Picard on purpose so that, like, I don't have to fucking live in the world
you're fucking
in which fucking TNG Picard becomes like a fucking psycho.
Okay, dude. All right. So you know what? That's fine. Live in that world, miss out on stuff that might be good, and that's okay. You can sit there. I won't try to pull you out of that tower. But I would still like to talk about what I like about this Star Wars comic book and what I think is cool about it.
Oh, there's cool stuff in there.
And if you are unable to enjoy something for what it is, then sure, man. You know, I hope you get some good stuff you like someday.
There's tons of good stuff to like.
Yeah. In Star Wars, I mean.
Oh, yeah, I don't. Oh, okay. Because I was about to yell out like, I don't want to hear talk about. I hope I get good stuff I like when you just fucking went through the end of Naruto for fuck's sake. Like, holy shit.
Oh yeah, that was great. That was great. I'm glad I was able to find out to pique my curiosities. You know, there was a dude who was like, why you? Because I was posting stuff about the ending, and the dude was like, why would you choose to spend your time going through this garbage Naruto shit and watching this instead of watching, like, you know, Hunter x Hunter and stuff? And I'm like, I didn't watch shit. I played 2 fucking CyberConnect games specifically because I didn't want to watch anything.
You dodged most of those bullets.
I put the energy into fucking consuming it via this format specifically so that I didn't have to watch it. So, God bless. But no, I hope there's something in Star Wars that you enjoy sometime, and that it's able to not be ruined so that you can enjoy those things. I don't have that caveat. I can just read this and go, yeah, that's a Vader, and here's what they did with it. I mean, like, one of my questions was like, how do you? The first thing when I was hearing about this that I had was like, how do you like handle a character that yells no in the goofiest way possible? And
I mean, do not want
and the moment that the comic starts is it starts on the no page. It starts on the no moment, and it does it.
Oh, it actually starts there?
It literally starts there. The first page of the comic is the no moment, and it's like, what if it was not as lame? I guess, because it was definitely, you know, the way.
Oh man,
you know, they handled it in a different way, and it was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm not pretending he didn't yell it in the lamest way possible. He totally did, but this way it goes through it is there's he kind of just has a much more believable take to it that leads it to him actually like kind of swinging at the Emperor for a second, or like attacking the Emperor for a minute, and then it kind of goes from there. And it kind of just goes through like, I'm like, okay, so if you had to go through this process of newly formed Vader being brought into the Empire, and no one really knows who this new sudden high-ranking officer is and why he's so important and why they have to listen to him, and then how they go about, like, you know, there's the Order 66, but there's always the remnants, and the cleanup of the remnants, of course, is the other part of it. It kind of works through a couple of
Order 66 was like one of the sloppiest things ever in the movie, because it's like, really, you got everybody in like a day, everybody
instantaneously, right? And you're like, how the fuck,
like,
right? And it's
what?
like, yeah, and it's like, no, they didn't.
This is a setting with trillions of people.
Yeah, they certainly didn't. they had to go scurry and clear them out, and it's like, and you know, and in fact, I remember most it was pretty much consensus that it was like between 3 and 4. That's what Vader was doing. He was just like jetting around, like sticking his lightsaber in cubby holes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so this kind of puts together, you know, like some events that are like, oh yeah, okay, that could be how they would have done that. And yeah, I mean, in particular, it leads to, so far the first book handles like him, how he gets his lightsaber and like how he has to go about it. It does a second take on the how to make your lightsaber red bit, which is not much better. It's not much better than the rat ghoul nest. I think it's the rat ghouls in KOTOR, in KOTOR 1, where you go in the caves, where you have to get it out of the eggs, right? So it's not much better than that, but it's a different version of it, where it's basically like the crystals are they're almost like these living, they're not living, but they're able to project images into your head in a way that like is like through the force, and you have to basically like make the crystal bleed. And you have to do that by like going through these images it's showing you of like realities and visions of things you would want, and you have to kind of like crush those hopes and dreams in your head. So basically it's like it forces Anakin to mentally like defeat the Izanami, the Genjutsu of the crystal, and like, you know, do the opposite of Gurren Lagann, where you choose to like not go the good reality and stay the course of negativity and like make the crystal bleed, and then it turns red, and then you get a red lightsaber out of it.
Dude, this sounds so fucking stupid, dude.
It's pretty dumb.
This sounds so terrible.
It's pretty dumb.
Like this, like maybe you shouldn't have gone so in depth on this after like being like, man, these comics are really cool.
There's some good stuff though. There's some good stuff.
Because this is fucking dumb.
Oh yeah, the crystal's dumb. Totally. Yeah. So an example of something that I like that the story does is, you know, I mean, there's dumb stuff all over the stuff I like too. But one example of something good is like it shows you what Vader sees when he's meditating. And it shows you like his kind of like inner realm, so to speak. And it's this really cool like kind of hellscape that he sees himself in as he's like kind of like, you know, sitting cross-legged and sort of floating. And his whole body is just this like concentration of like fuck energy, of just like, you know, like evil texture almost. His limbs are like not hit there because they're gone, so they're kind of just like these absent voids.
So he's a torso.
He's just kind of a floating torso where the limbs are like ghost limbs, more or less, right? While he's kind of there. And then in the hellscape, like parts of his body are like reaching out and kind of spawning all over the place, like with spawn as in like Spawn's cape type of thing. And there's these little flicks of light, these little butterfly-ish things that are kind of floating around, and he's trying to basically get that shit out of his mind by like, you know, through his meditative process. And it's almost like, okay, that's the little bits of him left that Luke eventually is going to appeal to and pull him back. But he's like in the process of meditating to get what little light remains outside of him, type of thing. And I was like, oh, okay. That's you know, that's an interesting way of doing it. Visually, it certainly looks cool. And then like you can almost imagine what the soundscape would be like to have these moments of like he's going through that, and then you interrupt it with someone going like, my lord, da-da-da-da-da, and then he's like back in reality, and he's like,
oh dude, come on, I'm doing my evil shit.
Exactly, like fuck you, what do you want type of things, you know. So you kind of have that. They introduce a character in the second book that kind of it is able to like make sense of like, how the fuck did Luke get a school up and running like functionally in such a short period of time with so little knowledge of the Order. He went and hung out with Yoda for a minute, got some training, and then had to figure out the rest on his own via some ghost conversations. How do we go from there into like, here's the academy, you know? So it kind of gives you some building blocks as to like how that would work, for example. It gives you some context, and you go like, oh, okay, I could see that. Yeah, he had some help in a different in different ways. And of course, it would also explain, how it's like if you kind of inherit this school, then like you might not be necessarily the best headmaster for it. So, that's another
I
thing
always liked
entirely.
the thought that he was just kind of bullshitting it.
But he does have those books, right? That are with him on his in his isolation, the texts.
Yeah.
Um,
That I guess he stole from Yoda's corpse.
they kind of they show you they have this they introduce this like this type of Jedi that is like someone who takes a vow that is like almost like a non-interference. I don't care what's going on. I need to.
Oh wait, people are pointing out that he never read those texts ever.
Okay.
So I guess he just looked at him a little bit and was like, I'll figure it out.
And then he's like, nah, burn him. Burn him though. Yeah, so then you kind of like you get introduced to like for example, a character who is like someone who does like this kind of like penance thing where it's like, here's an example of someone that would not get involved while the Jedi were being wiped out. Someone who pretty much was like on a fringe cult, a fringe belief system that branched off, that kind of went like, I'm not going to get involved at all until like, it comes down to it, until the Force brings you to me, type of thing. And you kind of go, oh, okay, so this is someone he hunts down, and they have a little fight and stuff, and it's pretty rad. All in all, again, not done so far, but pretty solid. I enjoy the pushback that he has against Palpatine from in a couple moments, because it's clearly like, you're ruling with an iron fist. Everyone kind of hates each other in these organizations. No one really is loyal out of like, dedication to the cause. They're loyal because they're waiting for an opportunity, and out of fear, So it kind of like puts a little, like it kind of puts a framework for Palpatine being this guy that's like, I'll fuck you up, you can fuck me up, but I'm also gonna, like, I'm gonna call you my friend, and I'm gonna speak to you in the way that, the way I spoke to you at the opera, and with the tragedy of Darth Plagueis type of thing. And all in all, once I get through it, I'll give you a conclusive statement. But for now, the first two books are pretty solid, and I think after that, I'm gonna check out. There's another book that sounds really cool called 000, which is it sounds ridiculous. There's like a C-3PO that like type droid that manages to fucking become ranked in the Empire somehow, and goes pretty far up the ranks and does some crazy shit or something. I don't know the deal, but I gotta go find out more about that. So yeah, pretty good. Pretty good comic books. And yeah, I mean, beyond that,
I'm glad you liked them and found enjoyment in these.
Beyond that, there was just, the usuals continue. Dokapon does its thing and so on, but that's pretty much.
Is that coming up on like a conclusion?
Yeah, I mean, maybe where the pathway to completion has been opened. So a lot of folks have been talking like, hey, any minute now type of thing, but it's not, all the posts you're seeing with people kind of saying that like, here we're about to hit it type of thing. It's not a hard lock. It's more just like the doorway to the credits has been opened.
So who's going to be the one to bring a gun?
Those are illegal.
Who's the one? Okay, so it's your house. Are you gonna? Hey, you know what you should do? You know what you should do for like the final sit down? You should serve everyone a steak dinner, and so that you can all put your plates to the side during the finale.
Oh. And serve them their steak knives as well.
Yes. Just in case.
Okay. Were you rapid fire salt tweeting while I was talking about Star Wars?
Oh, I was actually very much enjoying my tweeting. I would not call it salty at all.
Oh, okay.
I got to post a funny meme image of Anakin crying. That gave me a nice little internal smile. You didn't hear me typing?
I was focusing on what to say next, not paying
Oh.
attention to your typing.
I should turn my sensitivity up. There we go. Hold on.
Oh yeah.
All right, that should come through no problem.
Oh yeah. But I mean, I don't know. I also assume you're just looking shit up or just going about your life. You know, I don't know.
Oh, I constantly have to be looking stuff up. Just talking to somebody, I have trouble maintaining my attention. It's a problem.
Okay.
People don't talk fast enough.
That would explain some things. Cool.
Everyone needs to talk like 2-3 times faster.
Well, fortunately on YouTube, you can set it to 1.5.
But then everybody sounds weird. Like really weird.
What about you? Why don't you talk faster?
Well, I was doing that and everybody seemed not happy with what I was saying. And then I started to feel bad because I felt like I was shutting down your ability to talk about the thing that you enjoyed. And I'm like, well, I don't want to actually do that.
Someone
That
says,
seems like
Woolie, please mention DMC2 and how Dante is always bad now.
What? DMC2 Dante is just boring. He's not bad.
Oh, I see. So the point would be because DMC2 ruined his character, everything they did with him later should be finalized as completely nonsense and it's fan fiction because DMC2 Dante.
Except Dante doesn't do anything in DMC2 that's like aggressively bad. He's just kind of boring.
Right. So he's ruined.
Like if Dante had a moment where like he dropped his ice cream and he shat his pants, yeah, we'd have something to talk about. But that didn't happen. In fact, the most embarrassing thing he ever does is in his breakout role in DMC1, in which he starts like bawling his eyes out over the fact that he can't fuck a lookalike of his mother.
So
which is like the thing that me and you just literally never stop harping on him because it's a defining moment of his character.
Right. So, but then by the same consistency in internal logic, that would mean that Dante's boring forever.
No, he was boring for that one weekend.
And then?
There were 3 movies that took place over decades for Anakin, and he was always a crybaby little shit.
If an entry... But, like, it's curious because, I mean, following through with the logic, though, what... If an entry makes a character do something, and then afterwards that changes, what do you do to, like, accept that?
So, one of the things people brought up is that Resident Evil characters...
Vader was cool for one weekend.
The longer it goes on. Like, Leon becomes a moron, and Jill becomes a stupid idiot, and etc. But, like, at the very least, those things happen in the future. So you can at least look at the version of them before they became idiots and go, well, at least that character was good up until this moment in time.
So what if I say...
Whereas the Darth Vader thing,
what if I say he was
watching
cool for
the
one
original
weekend
trilogy and you're like, Darth Vader's so cool, and then you look about what he used to be like and you're like, this is literally the worst person in the world. I hate this person.
How's that not the same thing?
So if they brought out like a Star Trek like series that was Picard, well, it was Picard as a young man, and like Picard was like a child and crying all the time and shitting his pants and he smelled, yeah, I would look at TNG a little differently because that's fucking horrible.
So if he's cool in the future, when I honestly, I need help. I don't understand. I don't get it at all. I don't get how this explains it. I'm not following.
Characters can't be unruined, but there are times in which a character isn't ruined yet. You find out that Anakin Skywalker was an idiot and a baby. Therefore, going forward, his character is ruined forever.
Okay, now boring Dante.
If Darth Vader was cool and then became an idiot and a baby, you can at least go, oh man, at least he was cool in the original trilogy.
So boring Dante
Yeah.
happens after first Dante,
Yeah.
and that's the only reason why
To me, boring
to you?
Dante is like it's not a like a I don't disagree with that point of view. I just personally find boring Dante inoffensive. I don't find anything that Dante does or says in DMC2 to be like, oh my god, this is terrible.
Well, no, but it's not about
It's just really dull.
But it's not about how much it bothers you. It's about how different it is from what he becomes. The point we're making here is how different it is, right? Vader is super different.
No, it's not about how different it is. It's about whether or not it sucks or not. It's about how bad it sucks. If it sucks, then it sucks forever.
So it's not about the fact that two different versions of the character are like at odds with each other. Because I thought the core point was that like this version of this like character is a whiny 17-year-old begging for sex, and then this version is not.
No, they're not at odds with each other. They're the same character, and part of that character sucks now, forever.
Okay.
Dante, when he's in his depressed mode and he just wants ice cream, like in the anime and DMC2, is a really, really boring character.
Okay. So
Dante clearly has moments where I want him to leave and let somebody else do it because he is boring and I don't want him there. When he's in the upswing of his depressive episodes, yeah, great, awesome.
Depressive episodes.
And people also are bringing up Raiden.
The Virgil
missing
the Virgil
in
missing
MGS2 when he came out. I really did.
Well, actually, what's being brought
I
up?
didn't need Raiden to be saved for 4 or Rising.
Yeah, I'm moving on. But what's being brought up is was PS4 Kratos still lame because PS2 Kratos was lame?
No, PS4 Kratos is great because PS2 Kratos is an idiot.
All right.
So if in the original trilogy, fucking Darth Vader goes, oh man, I turned to the dark side because I was so sick of being a weak little baby man. Yeah, you know what? That would be a lot better. But he doesn't. He's actually just cool, and he's like, I love evil.
I'll let you guys know how comics 3 and 4 go, but so far 1 and 2, pretty fun.
How long are these comics? Like 25 pages?
Each one is a collection.
Or are they like?
Each one.
Are they like books?
It's a trade. It's not that thick. It's about 4 issues, I think. Maybe 4 or 6 issues. So, all in all, maybe how many pages are we looking at here? They're not numbered, but yeah, it's a thin trade. It's like a, you know, same size as like a Saga or something like that. You know.
I don't.
No what am I supposed to? When you ask me for how long they are, what's an example I could give you that would actually land?
A number of pages.
They're not numbered. They're not numbered, unfortunately. How about this?
I don't like. It's
about half of a manga. A typical manga size book size, about half of that.
I was just curious because like I remember reading the old Street Fighter comics and like any particular issue would be like 20, 25 and I'd blow through those in like 4 minutes. Like I remember when I got the big collection, like the volume, you know, the one that had Ryu on the front, the big white one.
Yeah.
That was like an hour.
I noticed that I read comics a lot slower than I read some manga, depending on how much detail is put into the art.
Yeah, you're probably appreciating the art a lot more than I ever did.
Yeah, so I will stop on pages where there's just a lot happening in a spread, but it's only like one line of dialogue. I'll stop to take in what's happening a little bit more. Whereas like if a manga is just kind of going through it, like for example, Trigun Maximum is like because if I talk about, like, if I were to talk about, say, Berserk or Vagabond, there's so much ridiculous detail. Or Death Note, actually. Death Note's a really good example of, like, Death Note will have these insanely detailed pieces in the middle of the story where you're like, oh my god, that's so well drawn, you know. If I were to say Trigun Maximum, that's a good example of a story where the Yashiro goes through pages where he's like, I just want to get to the through the important conversation here. If I could write this page in prose, I would. There's like 4 boxes with like nothing happening in them sometimes, and you're like, what? Is this even a manga anymore? Like, what are we doing, bro? Right? And then you get to like the next huge like spread, and you're like, oh fuck, look at this awesome picture of like a plant, you know, with the light bulb and the city around it, and it looks fucking incredible, you know. So I will flip through those pages of nothing and then stop and study those pages of detail. But like, yeah, I find that like if the art is really nice, which it is really good, it's pretty nice in these comics, I'll take a lot more time going through it than I would something that's not a special, you know. What are you tweeting?
Oh, I'm arguing still, but I'm just thinking about like how many comics I could like. Could I go through all of these Darth Vader comics in like a day? Is that feasible?
You probably could. Have you ever? Although, I mean, you know, I'm not going to tell you to go spite read just to come back and say whatever. I'm ultimately going to just ask if you ever had any moments or any books where you were reading them and then. Yeah, I know you're gonna spy read. Have you ever had any things where you read through them?
No, I mean, like I thought I did my time with All-Star Superman, in which I was able to disassociate and be like, All-Star Superman was a super fun read, and I loved it. I think it's a great comic. And then I take the quality of that and put it aside and be like, but Superman's still awful.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, I could probably read these comics and be like, these are great comics that happen to feature a version of Darth Vader that's not awful.
Yeah, I just want to talk about the comic I read. I don't really. No offense. I mean, if it does or doesn't affect your opinion, like I didn't bring it up to sell you on it. I brought it up because that was what I was reading.
Oh, I know. I got trapped in my own mind prison.
Okay, please understand, and for forever, that anytime I talk about anything comics related, I have no interest in selling you on it whatsoever because I know you're not interested. I bring it up solely because it's something that I'm consuming and that I'm liking, and that's the entirety of it.
This is the danger of my mind prison.
Okay, it's not a sell at you. So, have you ever read through something where you stopped on the art to be like, holy shit?
Once. Literally once.
What is it?
I remember it vividly because I was reading Full Metal Alchemist, and it is it's about halfway through when Alphonse and Ed are chasing Scar, and Scar's been shot in the leg, so he's a little slower. And they finally catch up to him when Scar sees like some guards and like turns around, and then you turn the page and it is a full 2-page spread of Ed just jumping in the air and just punching Scar in the face as hard as he can. And I just like, I was really happy with both the page turn, because I love the fucking page turn as a thing, and also fuck Scar. So I lingered on that for a while.
That's good. That's good.
That's the only time I can ever think of it.
That's good. Yeah. No, I like that feeling a lot. I get that. There's some really good moments when like there's a part in Kingdom Come where, I mean, Kingdom Come in general is like fucking Alex Ross painting every panel. So you're just like, holy shit, man. You're insane. You're going to paint a comic book? Okay, let's do it, you know? And there's some parts in that where you really just kind of you get the impact of the moment, like bunch of shitty Washington people are fucking around, and Shazam gets really angry, or Captain Marvel, I should say, gets really angry, and kind of just shows up and basically threatens to collapse the ceiling of Congress on them. And it's like, it was a really, I remember there being like a really nice shot there, or when Superman returned with like the black S, and I was like, oh fuck, that's a nice moment. But in a comic where everything is painted, you kind of just stop to see like,
You know what? I can think of another one, and it's a comic series that I did this often on, and it was Uzumaki.
mm,
Because, fuck.
oh,
There's a lot of
yeah, it was Superman. You're Superman. You're right. Sorry, misremembered.
it's a lot of fucking shit in there.
Saga had me
Just
doing that every issue. There'd be like a stop and fucking stare at this page. This is awesome. Super good stuff. In terms of that art. Yeah, cool.